Well, I'm back with another video. If you look behind me, you will notice a little bit of a problem with my ride height between the back and the front. I've had a problem, well, not really a problem, there's nothing wrong with the car, but if you look very carefully, you will see that the rear is raised, what I've worked out to be around 4 inches, and it handles the load very well. But the front has been a little bit of a problem lately. Since I put the winch onto the bull bar, things have changed a little bit. It's an 8274 high mount winch, which is a little bit heavy, and it has dropped the front a little bit. Now the front was always a little bit lower than it should be. The suspension is old. I don't know how old. I've had the car for 5 years and it was in the car when I got it. I don't know what hard wheeling it's had in its life before. But we are sitting with about a 55mm difference in ride height. Now I cannot at this stage afford a new set of springs to eliminate the difference. So I have come up with a bit of a plan. I've taken some measurements and I've come up with a plan, as I said, to remedy this situation. It's a combination of two things. Number one, I am going to put 52mm, or rather I have a set of 52mm spacers that will go on top of the coil springs in the front, which will basically sort out the ride height. You won't notice a couple of millimeters here and there after that. But the other day I took the springs out because I had to take the bump stops out for another modification that I'm going to show you in a minute. But while they were out, I jacked the axle up until the rubber stop, which I would call a last resort rubber stop, little triangular one, until that basically touched right at the top. And even while it was touching, I still had roughly 90mm of compression left in the shock absorbers. So I've decided that I can actually do with slightly shorter bump stops and I'm not going to damage anything. So what I've done is I have made an adjustable set of bump stops, or rather I can choose between the standard length and a 50mm shortened length, and I'm going to show you that right now. Alright, what you're looking at right now is one of these shortened bump stops. As you can see, let me get my hand in the picture, the top now is a little bit wider than the bottom cup for the rubbers. That is because I have cut off this end. So what I've done now is, before I welded up the end of this, I took the plate, drilled a hole in the center and welded a nut on the inside of it, just the same as this has a nut welded on the inside of it. So all I have to do now is bolt this cup with the rubbers in directly to the shortened bump stop, just as I would have bolted it to this. But now, although I haven't done it yet, this open end I am also going to weld closed with a plate with a bolt welded to the end of it, or from the inside sticking out, and I will be able to screw this back onto the bump stop and then put the original rubber bump stops back onto here for a standard length bump stop if I need it. So that is the mod that I've done to the bump stops themselves. Here you can see is the 52mm spacers, and I'm going to quickly go ahead. It's not going to take me too long. I'm going to go ahead and bolt those into the car. I've been driving without bump stops for the last week while I did this modification. I don't like doing it. There's not a hell of a lot holding those springs in place, but I only live 4 kilometers from work and there's no real rough driving or anything, so I'm quite alright, quite happy to do that. But I definitely won't go do some serious four-wheel driving with rather without the bump stops. So I'm going to go ahead and whip the wheels off the car quickly, jack it up, put it on stands, drop the front suspension, and I'm just going to stick these spacers in. And then we're going to take a look at what it looks like. As usual, we start off by just cracking the wheel nuts so that I don't have to battle with them when the wheels are in the air. They won't be spinning. I've already chocked the back wheels and pulled up the handbrake and left it in first gear for what the handbrake's worth anyway. We know what the handbrakes are like on these cars, but I've chocked the back wheels anyway. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, the wheel nuts are all loose. I'm going to go ahead, jack the car up and put it on stands. Now I'm not going to bore you with that, so I'm going to stop this and come back to you once I have it on the stands and the wheels off. Alright, everything is off. The axle is now drooped. I've taken the liberty of removing the bottom of the shock mounts as well as the sway bar mounts because the radius arms are making contact with the sway bar, so I've dropped that as well. Now you can see the springs have just fallen out by themselves. I'm now free to install the spacers and the bump stops back into their rightful places, and now this shouldn't take me too long. I'll bring you back in a minute. Alright, I am all done and ready to put the wheels back on. In the configuration it is now, the axle is literally hanging on the fully extended shock absorbers. I did this so that I could see how much clearance I have between the sway bar and the front drive shaft, and it's close. I have about 6 to 8 millimeters. I haven't measured it, but it looks about that much. I think it's a little bit too tight. I don't know what the clearance will do under unequal flex, because both are flexed at exactly the same amount at the moment. But if the left hand side it gets compressed fully and this one extends fully, it might get, well, theoretically it should get closer. So I am definitely going to make a set of 50 millimeter spacers for the sway bar. It doesn't look like they have any spacers, unless the ones you're looking at there right now, unless that is part of a lift kit, but they look pretty standard to me. I don't think that's extended at all. So I'm going to make extended ones of 50 millimeters longer than that. That should take care of that. But I'm now going to jack it up, put the wheels back on, and then we're going to take a look at what it looks like. For those of you with a keen eye, you will notice I have a power steering fluid leak. I remember the last time when I reconditioned my original steering box. When I put it back, I really battled to seal the hoses onto the power steering box, and I think this is what I have, exactly the same thing again now. I'm going to, not today, I better hurry up, I've got some bad weather coming in. So I'm going to jack this up quickly, get the wheels back on, and then we're going to take a quick look at it. Well, there you have it. I'm very happy with the ride height now. It's looking really good. I haven't taken it for a test drive yet. I expect the steering would have moved even more. That is why I didn't go to too much trouble to straighten the steering perfectly after I'd fitted the steering box, because I knew once I'd raised it, it was going to be even more out. But what's the jack in the way? I can definitely notice the extra ride height. It is very noticeable, especially in the entry angle of the car. That's impressive. And once I've got the 33-inch tires on, that's going to be even better. Fantastic. And that's the view from the other side. I'm a little bit close to the wall here. But yeah, no, very happy with the ride height. Everything seems to be clearanced. As I said, I'm definitely going to make a set of 50mm spacers for the sway bar. But everything else looks to be hunky-dory. The only possible problem I could have if I really go and flex this thing out is the shocks bottoming out on full extension. But compressing them to their limits is almost impossible. It'll never happen. The car will lift up before the shocks reach their limit. So yeah, very happy. I'm going to just pack up here quickly because we've got some weather coming in, and hopefully I will get a quick test drive in before the rain starts. Well, it has been roughly a month now since I did the lift on the front, and first impressions were that I couldn't detect any changes at all, although I know the geometry had to have changed a little bit. But after driving it now for around about a month, The only difference that I can feel is that the steering is just slightly lighter, understandably so, because my caster angle had to have changed slightly. Apart from that, no negative side effects at all. The car rides beautifully as it is, and I'm very happy, as I said, with the stance. But raising the suspension, it is now raised roughly 4 inches. Doing that changes a number of things in the car, which you can correct with certain methods. For instance, caster. Your caster is probably the most important of all the changes that happen when you lift the car with a solid axle and radius arms, is the caster angle. Now, when I bought this car 5 years ago, it had a 2-inch lift in it, which I assume was a pretty tired 2-inch lift, and it had caster correction bushes in, so I never ever suffered any death wobble or anything like that. And I've never, to this day, I've never measured what the caster angle is on it. But the caster angle now had to have changed when I lifted it an extra 2 inches. And as you go up in lift, the higher the car gets, the more the angle, or the caster angle will change per inch lift that you do. The higher the car gets, the more the angle changes. So I know the caster angle had to have changed to the negative at the moment. I don't know what it is, but I'd like to correct that. As I said, it has caster correction bushes in it, and I'd like to get rid of them. Another thing that raising the suspension does is, a lot of people don't believe it, but if you look at a vehicle that has, let me face the camera, if you have toe in, and I always believe if you want to understand a certain concept, exaggerate it so that you can actually see what you're talking about. So if you have the 2 wheels and toe in, the more, if you consider my arms to be the radius arms, the more you drop, if you've got toe in, the more you drop the suspension, or rather raise the suspension and drop the axle, that toe in becomes more and more camber. Eventually you're sitting with the wheels either a positive or negative camber. In other words, they're either leaning like this or they're leaning like that, depending on what your caster angle was to start off with. So your caster angle has actually, if you get to a certain stage where your radius arms are vertical, becomes camber. So as you go, your caster angle becomes more and more camber instead of caster. So you are changing the entire geometry of the whole car as you raise it like that. So I've now got, theoretically, a caster issue that has partially been corrected by caster correction bushes, which I'd like to get rid of. I've got a toe in or toe out problem that, although is very subtle and probably not detectable, it is there. In theory, it has to be there. I've also got a problem that you cannot get away with any caster correction bushes or anything like that, or caster correction plates for that matter. Maybe you could. But as you raise the suspension and the radius arms drop, if you look at it from the sides, as they drop, if this is the wheel and this is where the radius arm attaches to the chassis, the horizontal distance between those 2 points, the center of the axle and the center of the mounting on the chassis, that gap, as the suspension is raised, gets shorter and shorter. In other words, the wheels start moving backwards. And if you look carefully if you go back in this video and look carefully where I showed the springs after I put them back in, you would see that they are very slightly curved. And that is because the wheels have actually moved slightly back. Now, you can go ahead and buy a set of custom-made radius arms that will correct all of that. It will correct everything. But you are going to pay a premium for those radius arms. So I sat and I thought, how can I correct all of these problems without spending a ton of money? And the only way you can do it is by flipping the radius arms. Flipped radius arms have a number of advantages besides the clearance and everything else. You can custom make the brackets to correct all of those problems. You can correct caster, so that you can use standard radius arm bushes with the holes in the center. You can correct for the wheels moving back. You can actually push them further forward, and you can correct your caster. Everything is perfect by just flipping the arms. So it takes a little bit of work, a little bit of thought, and on a little bit of calculation, I've worked out with the roughly 4 inches of lift that it's got in it now, the wheels have moved back between 12 and 15 millimeters backwards. So I am going to flip those radius arms, and I'm going to, the brackets that I make, or the brackets that are welded to the axle, are going to move the axle 15 millimeters further forward. They're going to, when I weld them on, I will correct the caster angle, so I'll weld them on at the perfect caster angle, which I assume is around, after a bit of research, 4 to 4.5 degrees is perfect. So I'm probably going to go for around 4.2, 4.3 degrees and weld them on like that. Once I have done that, everything will be corrected. Now, I haven't seen anybody reinstall a sway bar once they've flipped the standard radius arms. It's one thing to have custom made flipped radius arms. You might be able to remount the sway bar after that, but I want the sway bar in because my car is not going to be, or I've never intended it to be, a serious heavy off-roader as in a rock crawler or anything like that. I don't intend on taking it on serious off-road tracks where I potentially can damage it. I can't afford to, this is my daily, I cannot afford to do without it, and I can't afford to repair it. So I'm going to be designing and building a set of custom plates that I will weld to the axles that will correct the caster angle, correct for the positioning of the wheels, and at the same time provide for a mounting for the sway bar. And because the radius arm is attached via a bracket to the axle that is welded and cannot move, the position of the radius arm relative to the axle never changes no matter where the suspension goes. So I can incorporate a mounting for the sway bar just above the radius arm, and that position will never move. So that is my intention. I'm going to get into that shortly. But I've decided I'm not going to tackle that until I have got an adjustable length panhard bar, because as you lift the vehicle, the higher you lift it, the same as the radius arms moving the wheels back, the panhard bar moves the axle to the right hand side. This is a right hand drive car, so the panhard bar sits from chassis right to axle left, and as the suspension is raised, so the axle is pulled towards the driver's side, which is the right hand side. So I've decided not to tackle that job until I have the panhard bar in my hands, and I'm waiting for one at the moment. I'm having it custom made. I know a guy who actually makes beautiful CNC milled custom radius arms. I could go that route, but as I said, they're very expensive, or maybe they're actually not that expensive if you compare them to the big brand names. They're half the price, but I still would not like to spend that kind of money, and I prefer the benefits of having the flipped radius arms, because you can fix all those problems, as I said, and you gain, the bonus is you gain a little bit of clearance under the axle, which I probably never need, but it's there. If I ever want to sell the car one day, it'll be a selling point for it, especially if my mods are very successful, which I'm sure they will be. There's been many people who have done flipped radius arms, and everybody says that it improves things like crazy. But I'm not going to tackle any of that now. The car is running very well as it is. I'm still tinkering with a lot of things in the car, small things, at night and things. So that is it for the car. I'm very happy with the mods, as I said. I'm just going to do the caster correction because I like a challenge, and this is a challenge for me, and it'll be a first, as far as I know, of somebody flipping the standard radius arms and still incorporating the sway bar, and I think I can get it right. I will let you know when I get to that, but as I said, I'm waiting for that panhard bar first.